anyway, Don Jefferies graduated out of high school in '66. Went to Alvin Community College from 66 to 68, and then I went to Stephen F. Austin, graduated from there. So came back, taught in Alvin, but I'll cover some of that stuff in the presentation. So I don't want to repeat myself. It takes too long. I have a lot of stuff, so anytime you feel like you want to get up and leave, feel free to do that. Nobody's chained to your chair. So I wrote a book titled Mechanics and Leadership Lessons from My Dad, the Mechanic, World War II veteran. And my dad's pretty much my hero. I learned a lot from my dad, my mother as well, but the book is about my dad and what I learned from him. I have had multiple positions in my life in education and so on, and I'll kind of go through that as I go through the presentation. So if I get this thing to go. Oh, there you go. All right, so that's just the jacket, book jacket, cover my picture of my dad, and title of the book and all that. Background information on my dad. My dad was actually born out of wedlock in Galveston, Texas in 1918. You say, whoa, why'd you put that up there? Because it's an important part of my dad's life. He was very, very close to his mother, and I think part of the reason was that. But Dad was also, someone who became a really devoted family man. And, I feel like he would have no problem saying that. And I didn't find that out until a little bit later in life. But his mother married a widower, John Fred Jefferies. That's how we got the name Jefferies. And my grandpa, and he adopted Dad when they were kids. He already had 4 kids himself. So Dad took to them really well. Grandpa was really good to Dad, and Dad became close to him as well. Lived on the east side of Houston off Telephone Road on Marlin Street. He went to Stephen F. Austin High School. In the 10th grade, he was expelled from high school because he knocked his social studies teacher out. Teacher grabbed him by the hair. He was talking or something in class. I don't know. Dad was a very good student. He was in student council before and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, teacher grabbed him. He was also a little bit too cocky sometimes. But he cocked back and, right hooked his social studies teacher and canned him. And that was his last day in school. And Dad came, picked him up, the principal called him, and he said he went to work. So he worked at Reddick's Ice Cream Store, which is not around anymore, Reddick Ice Cream Company. I think Borden's bought him out. And he drove a truck, delivered ice. This was back in the 30s. He was born in 1918. This is in the 30s when they still had ice boxes. So for those of you who don't have any gray hair or have no idea what this is, and I'm not being sarcastic, okay, that the fact was they still had ice boxes. And so he delivered like 100-pound blocks of ice, tongs, put them on his back, take them to the house, put them in the ice box, and had to do that once or twice a week, I guess. I'm not sure of the cycle, but to keep their food cold, because that's what they had. So he did that, and of course, ice cream, definitely. He learned to work on cars, trucks, and motorcycles. He never wanted me to have a motorcycle because when he was a kid at that age, a good friend of his had a motorcycle, had a wreck, and lost his leg. He's like, you will not get a motorcycle. So I did not get a motorcycle. But we did get a truckster, which was like a little truck Cushman three-wheel thing. And I wrecked it and cut myself up. So anyway, he registered for the draft in October 17th, 1940. And he was called up and entered the Army on March 20th, 1941. So England, of course, is at war. The Allied and Axis forces are at war at this time, and England's not doing too well. But Dad's called up, and Roosevelt's trying to convince the country that we can't be isolationists. We've got to do something to save the Allied forces here. So he went through his basic training in Fort Claiborne, Louisiana, which is not there anymore, but people in near Alexandria, Louisiana. Received a Signal Corps training in Fort Monmouth and participated in what was known as the Carolina Maneuver. So the advantage my dad had in terms of being in the service during World War II was he went through training prior to Pearl Harbor. So it wasn't as rushed and as hurried as a lot of training came after that. So he had good training, and Dad was pretty talented with the radio and with the telegraph and coded messages and all that stuff because he was assigned to headquarters. So anyway, in 1942, he embarked for Carrickfergus, Northern Ireland. They left New York on the Chateau Thierry, and he was escorted. One of the battleships that escorted him was actually the battleship Texas, and he was always kind of proud of that. So he earned the rank of the tech sergeant, became a radio operator assigned to the Allied headquarters in North Africa, and then when they went into Italy and they formed the 5th Army under Mark Clark, Dad was assigned to that headquarters. He was assigned to headquarters the whole time. He actually got to give Eisenhower got to drive Eisenhower around in a Jeep in North Africa once in a while. It's kind of cool. And when they were in Italy, he witnessed Mussolini and his mistress when the partisans captured and killed Mussolini and his mistress, and they hung him upside down, hung him in the square of Milan. And I've been there, and it's really cool to go back to places where he was. And anyway, Dad went through and he saw that, and we talked about it a little bit. Saw what he saw, and he said the people were. I mean, they were raging on Mussolini and his mistress on their bodies, all kinds of stuff. And I'll spare you the grotesque stuff. So during the war, he never returned home. He spent over 3 years in European theater and never came home. And not because he didn't want to go home, but he felt he was doing his job. I mean, he was committed to that. And he was with headquarters, and that's what he did. He earned 6 bronze battle stars. If you don't know what that is, basically for every 6 months you're in an active combat zone, you get a bronze battle star or a stripe on. There's one picture that I've got over there, and he's got 5 bars on his sleeve. That's before he earned the 6th one. You get bars there, but you also get stars on your medal. Good conduct, European, African medal, Middle East Defense Medal, and American Defense Medal. All the medals he got, some were pretty much standard. He could have got a Purple Heart because he burned his hand, but he was in camp, and he told the commander, he said, well, Norris, you can get a Purple Heart over that. He said, I don't want a Purple Heart for this. I burned my hand in camp, and you want me to get a Purple Heart? And all these guys here losing legs and stuff? That ain't happening, so he didn't get it. So, anyway, he was in 6 major campaigns, and he must have done service on July 3rd, 1945. And at that point, he came back and he got his GED. Because like I said, he was expelled from high school. He was never proud of that. I didn't know that story until I became a social studies teacher. He said, you're going to be a social studies teacher? And I go, yeah, Dad. And he said, well, let me tell you a story. So I have never grabbed a kid by his hair. Okay? That's one thing I learned from that. Don't do that. Okay. So anyway, I was fortunate enough to go through some of the places he'd been back in 2001. My oldest daughter played professional soccer on a team in Berlin. She played in the Bundesliga in Berlin, Germany. And Mike over there, he knows, played with his daughter Tori, and they were all really good soccer players. And she played Division I college and then played in professional soccer in Germany. So anyway, this is Dad and some of his buddies in the 63rd. Come on. What am I doing? Okay. I guess that doesn't work. Nope. Okay. So anyway, Dad's on the right over there. This is Dad a few years later after the war, in the early 1950s, and the reunion with some of his buddies that was in the 63rd with. Dad didn't do much of this. This is my dad. He's a short guy, 5'4", weighed about 135 pounds, so he was not big. I became a giant in the family, okay? So, a little giant, right? This, actually, Gene Barney, that was his best man at his wedding. He married my mother. Walt Disney came through when they were in North Africa, and Walt Disney designed an insignia for them. He did that for some of the units, but not too many. So the 63rd was really pretty special. And so they did this goofy deal. So it's got 63rd here, and this is basically one of the tech guys that rolled cable and set up the communication wiring and systems and so on. That's my dad when he was about, 12 years old maybe, something. This glove, putting this stuff together, I just realized something, and I'll show you in a second, about that glove. But he was really a big fan of baseball. He lived near the old Houston Buffalo Stadium, which is off 45. There was a Foley's there before. It's gone. I don't know what's there now. So he was about a mile from what's called Buff Stadium, Houston Buffaloes, which was the first farm club for a Major League Baseball team, the St. Louis Cardinals. And so people like Dizzy Dean, players like that, actually played there in Houston before they went up to the St. Louis Cardinal team. So anyway, that's Dad. That's his uniform. He played baseball when he worked, after the war, he first went to work for Texaco and then Phillips. That uniform was the one, and I'll show you again, but anyway, that's the one he wore playing in the Refinery League. a lot of people don't know about the Refinery League, but it was a semi-pro league in baseball in the state of Texas, and probably in Louisiana and other places. I don't know for sure all about that, but I know that it was basically a semi-pro team. Dad played shortstop. 5'4", shortstop's a good spot, right? So, that's my dad in his uniform, and he's holding some little critter that's about 6 months old. And you can see the resemblance, so it was a lot alike. But anyway, that was me. That's Dad, and once again, I say he's a family man. So he took us fishing, did all kinds of things. This is up in Oklahoma with some of my mother's brothers, my uncles and stuff, went fishing up there. That's my dad and our little herd in Manville. So we moved from Houston in 1961 and moved out to Manville because Mom and Dad always wanted the farm. And so we did, and we went to like Camazola Dairy and Del Bello's and different people had dairies over there in Manville. And we bought little calves that were mostly dairy, crossed between Holstein Jersey and Hereford bulls, and that was our herd. The first calf we butchered for meat, because we had a huge garden, raised our own food, Mom canned prolifically, but the first calf we butchered, and Mom cooked the steak, and so we're eating supper, and I cut into the steak and take my first bite of beef that we raised, right? I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, this is tough. Sorry about that. He said, son, it's tougher where there's none. So, I never complained about me. Mom and Dad both grew up in the Depression. They went through World War II in the Depression era and struggled like a lot of families. Some of your ancestors went through the same stuff, believe me. That's my dad. He was also an inventor. He worked at Phillips, and they had a problem with they had a train. They called it a dinky. It's a small train. I say small, not quite as big as a big locomotive engine, right? And they use it within the plant there at Phillips on the ship channel to move cars and stuff around on the tracks. Well, we have so much ice around here in the Gulf Coast, right? Well, when we did, and the track became iced over, the train would just spin on the track, right? They couldn't get it going. So Dad came up with an idea, and he invented a device that he put on the front of the train, in front of the wheels, and powered it with the air compressor off the engine. And what it did, it had a canister loaded with sand, and it shot the sand down in front of the wheel and think he'd take off. And away he'd go. And he got a check for it. So they even gave him money because they probably got the patent on it. He did when he worked at Phillips, right? Not just Phillips, any plant. When you work for a plant like that or a company, you don't get the patent on it, right? So anyway, that's my dad. He also ran for city council in Manville. And this is him here. And what's going on here is that he's going, where's the camera? So, Dad, you weren't paying attention, right? Two things in his campaign, and he received the most votes in that election, him and Alton Bailey, who was the mayor. Two things that were important to him in Manville back then. One was the roads, and that was important to all the people out there, the road conditions. And the other thing was police protection, because the county had a hard time managing the roads, and they had a hard time providing the sheriff's department protection, because they're spread thin. I think Missouri County's pretty big, right? So he was real proud of that. This is the first road grader that they bought for the city of Manville. That was him standing by. That is the beginning of this. Okay. So in the book, here are some things that I learned from my dad. I'm going to go through the basic principles. One is learn to follow. If you want to be a good leader, you got to know what it's like to follow leadership and how to implement what leadership expects you to do. Okay? Because if you don't understand that, then you're going to have a hard time understanding leadership position. You have to develop a work ethic. My dad and Mom were two of the hardest working people that I've known in my whole life. And, I'm a bit of a workaholic. I still don't go to bed till 11:30 at night. I get up at anywhere between 5:30 and 7. But each part of my book, I cover each one of these topics and explain how it related to me. Learn to anticipate. If you can't anticipate in your job what's going to happen next, or what's going on in the culture of the society or whatever, you're going to be left behind. And if you can, you're going to have a leg up on other people. So learn to anticipate. And I'll explain some of that in a minute. Let me go through this quickly. If it ain't broke, son, don't fix a damn thing. That's what he told me. It ain't broke, don't fix it. Work on things that really need to be dealt with. Don't focus on that. If it needs fixing, diagnose the problem and the causes first. Don't try to fix it without knowing what caused the problem. Think about applying that to your job or to my job. I've been a high school principal, deputy superintendent in Texas and Arizona both. Scottsdale, Arizona was a deputy soup. I've been a superintendent in 3 districts. And I can tell you that the things that we fixed in our business in terms of education, performance, test scores, et cetera, students and instruction, you have to diagnose the problem before you try to fix it. So use the right tools. No matter what you're doing, know what tools are available to you, whether it's data management tools, computer type stuff, or if it's mechanical. Use the right tools. So when I tried to use a screwdriver as a chisel one time with a hammer, my dad chewed my butt out because that's the wrong tool. Get a chisel, okay? Don't force it. I love this one. I'm gonna say more about it in a minute. Take care of your tools. Whatever tools you're using, manage them, take care of them, and particularly if you're working with somebody else that's providing the tools, or if they're your tools as well. Pry bars give you leverage, and I have pry bars in quotes because a pry bar can be anything that gives you leverage to do a better job at what you're doing. So for physical things, clearly it saves your back. It does a lot of things for you if you're using pry bars to work or move and adjust things. You say, well, wait a minute, does that not conflict with don't force it? No. Use a pry bar when it's appropriate for the job. If you have to force something, if something's not aligned right, it may break, whatever. So don't use a pry bar on that. But where you know what you're doing, then a pry bar could be a real advantage. And the same thing in business or education, whatever. Organize the parts as you disassemble and reassemble as planned. So you take things apart. If you're disaggregating test scores, which we did a lot of, okay, in the education business, if you're disaggregating test scores, then you want to make sure that you put it back together in a way that's usable to you. Just like taking the parts of a car. If you're dismantling an engine, and I've seen my dad buy it. He never bought a new car in his whole life. Bought a used truck, realized that weekend he needed to do some work in. He tore it down that weekend, did a complete overhaul job, drove to work on Monday. So he did the things he did, he was able to take it apart, disassemble, manage where everything went. He knew what was involved, and then put it back together correctly. And when you get through with it, it must run. So whatever business you do, whatever career you have, when you get through doing and working on things or making corrections in your business, make sure it can run. Make sure that there's accountability in the system. So, because if you don't, then you've wasted a lot of time. Keep your engine tuned. Stephen Covey wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and other things. I actually went through his training. I was a trainer for 7 Habits at one point. He didn't say keep your engine tuned. His was sharpen the saw, right? Sharpen the saw. If you have a dull saw and you've got a lot of wood to cut, take time to sharpen the thing. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting time and energy using a dull saw. So the same thing with anything in business, keep your engine tuned. Okay. Learn to follow. Let's talk about that real quick. As I said, learning to follow precedes leading. You have to know what that's like. Dad gave clear instructions and tasks for projects. So as a principal, superintendent, whatever, it was important for me when working with people, training people, or setting out expectations for a job, to give them clear expectations. I'll put everything in writing. I mean, I've got more documents than you check your head at. Ask my wife. She's trying to get me to get rid of a lot of this stuff. So anyway, he gave clear instructions, and I learned that from Dad, and it paid off, right? I understood his expectation before I started. So if you work for someone, know what their expectations are. Those of you in college now, and you get out and you start your job, you're working somewhere, make sure you know what the goals and expectation and mission of the company, know what those things are, so you can help that company be successful. He stressed safety. He worked at the plant. He was very proud of the fact that they had, at that time, millions of man hours without an accident. And that's a big accomplishment in a refinery. So I paid attention to what he did and how he did it. So if you work with people who know what they're doing, people are really talented, really good at what they do, pay attention to what they're doing. and how they're doing, and learn from them, learn from the best, okay? That's what you need to do in order to develop your skills and talents in leadership. My application. So how did I apply a lot of this stuff Dad taught me? So I'm going to whip through this. First of all, I had some really good teachers, both in high school and college. I had Jim Phillips, for example, for zoo and botany. His picture's on the wall out there somewhere. He was a professor here and became dean of instruction. Mr. Phillips was an awesome instructor. Love the guy. I had Mr. Bennett for chemistry. I had, what was her name? Another chemistry teacher. You know, some of the teachers I had Mr. Meadows for engineering algebra, and also one of the most useful and best classes I ever had. It is so useful. I mean, I made an A in it. I loved it. Mr. Meadows was a great teacher. And what was that class? Slide rule. Do you even know what a slide rule is? No. You have calculators now. Okay? So I did love the cat. Mr. Meadows was a really good math instructor, and I was lucky enough to teach his son, Devin, in high school. And Devin was on a mock trial team. I trained a team for mock trial, 3 teams. Mock trial competition, Missouri County Courthouse, back about 1980, I think. And I took 2 teams to this competition. Every high school in Missouri County could send a team, or 2 or 3. Well, we sent 2. And I had some great kids. And we went to the courthouse. They were judged by sitting judges, district judges, and lawyers. That's the only people on the panel that did all the judging and evaluating. My 2 teams took 1st and 2nd place. We swept them. And Devin was one of the reasons. He was really good. So, you know, learn from the best teachers. And, you know, develop relationships with the people you supervise. When you supervise people, know who they are, know what they're about, know what's important to them, because that is going to make it better for you and for your organization. The other thing is that, let me tell you about the comments about leadership is that, you know, I can talk a lot about things that I was able to accomplish, but here's one thing: if you go away with anything at all from this, know that to be a successful leader of any organization or group, you have to be able to build a team. You have to have people that will work with you and help you accomplish that. And I've been fortunate to do that. So, train employees by breaking down performance tasks into understandable units. You want somebody to understand something, develop skill using a program, software, or accomplish tasks in the business. Make sure you break it down and train them in the units of work that's involved in this. Otherwise, you know, it's all mush to them. It becomes very confusing. Help others succeed. Other people who work for you and work with you, help them succeed. Help them to be successful, because that's going to help the whole organization. If you haven't figured this out, you know, part of what I'm telling you is that as a leader of an organization, it's the organization, it's the school district, for example, it's the kids that have to be successful. And so how you do that is critical. Stress collaboration and cooperation, and I'm big on that. I do that in my teaching. When working with someone, do more than they ask. My dad always said, you know, don't just give them what they ask you to do, go beyond that. And I've made that a habit in my life. That's just what I do. Build trust and confidence in your decision making. If the people who work for you trust your decision making, then they're going to execute the plan. They're going to do the things needed to accomplish the mission and goals of the organization. Check for understanding. And anybody that's been a teacher, you know how important that is. Okay? If you don't check for understanding as you're teaching somebody something new, okay, and then you may be getting to the end of the lesson, and they may be stuck back on, you know, part 2. So you have to check for understanding as you go through a lesson. Oh, you know what? It just doesn't show up on that. Yeah, there's my pointer. But I got a cat. So check for understanding. All right. Take a couple of the things that are in the chapters. Develop a work ethic. Dad and Mom were outstanding examples of people that have a strong work ethic. My mother, when we moved out to Mansville, I'll show you a picture too. I mean, there was nothing out there. This is on County Road 58, about a mile off 288. And I'm telling you, I mean, we hunted out there. we fished out there. It was like, you know, now it's Del Bello, Lakes subdivision.
Yeah, subdivision.
And mother, when we first moved out there, dug up the backyard to level it out. We didn't have a tractor. She got a shovel. Dad came, when he came home from work to Phillips every day, he went out and worked. I mean, we didn't go to work till the sun went down, even after that sometimes. It took pride in his work. It told me, take pride in what you do. He never complained. I mean, why complain? I mean, he just didn't do it. I never heard him complain about anything, except maybe politicians, So, skill development, like I say, whatever your skill is, take it to the highest level you can. He continued, actually even at Phillips, took some classes at Lee College. Philip paid for him, and he took some classes on diesel and stuff like that. He could rebuild cranes, trains, you name it. He didn't waste time. He didn't waste anything. He's very organized. When his tools, if I didn't put the channel lock pliers back where channel lock pliers go, I was in deep trouble.
Yeah. Did he ever complain or say that it could have been designed better?
Do what?
It could have been designed better, a better way, like the engineering of the contraption he's working on.
Oh, yeah. Research a job, learn the job, and do the job. Learn how to do it and do it well. If you do it well, recognition, dance will take care of itself. Some people go into a job, they enter a career, and they start at the bottom, and their goal is, I don't want to be here. I want to move up, and I want to move up fast. Okay? And I'm going to tell you, I don't think that's a good formula. Okay? I think life, jobs, and so on have a natural rhythm. And if you do the job and you do it well, that will be recognized and appreciated. And if you're there just for self-aggrandizement, that's not going to work. Okay? It just doesn't serve you or the organization well at all. Learn to anticipate. Let me tell you how I learned to anticipate. And most of this stuff, very similar type of lessons. So I'm helping my dad one day on a mechanical job. We're working underneath the car doing something, I don't know what it was. And I'm holding a flashlight for him so he can see what he's doing, right? And so he did something, and he goes to the next spot, and the flashlight's still over here. And he goes like this. Damn it, son, anticipate what I'm gonna do next and move that light. I got it. Now, using fear in learning, teaching, is not a good strategy, unless he's your dad. So, I'm going, yeah, I got it, Dad. So learn to anticipate. Know the job well enough you can anticipate what comes next. As a superintendent in Orange, for example, in Greenville, one of the things I did, one of the most influential books I ever read was Alvin Toffler's Future Shot, 1970. Very powerful book. It still is today. It probably opened your eyes to a lot of things. But I hired some futurist guys from the Future Society to come in and work with the district, brought in business people, community people, leaders, and so on, and school leaders, and we went through their process on planning for the future and anticipating, what we might face in the school business. For example, shortage of funds, right? So the business people loved that. I mean, they're going like, this is the best thing we've ever had. The guys were really, really good. Anticipate things before they happen gives you an advantage. And, it's particularly true if you gamble. So, I'm just kidding. Be able to anticipate the needs of your employer and your customers. So if you're serving people, know what they expect, know what they want, and provide that. And if you do, you'll have repeat customers. It's real hard to do, and so it's on your chest, and you're trying to stab that thing in there. And you have to go through a throwout bearing to get to that, and I couldn't get it done. And Dad let me struggle with that for 20 minutes. And he reached down and he handed me a little wooden tool. I don't know, I was emotional with that. Anyway, he handed me this little tool, and he said, line that throwout bearing up first. Then, lo and behold, it worked. But he made me struggle, so I learned. So anyway, if you have to pour something to make it work, you probably have an alignment problem. Something's not right. So back up, try to figure it out. I told you transmission sorting. New initiative programs and processes require thoughtful alignment with existing program processes and so on. In an institution, let me tell you, Houston ISD is going through a process demanded by TEA, right? To basically reconstitute the district, many of the schools there. Now, I actually was hired in Greenville in 2006 to reconstitute Greenville High School. Could have been low performing for 3 years. Low test scores. The test analysis people they hired to break the data down said, you know, you're not gonna be able to do this for 4 or 5 years. I mean, they were deep stuff. And a year and a half later, we had it off the list. So we had to align the programs and the teachers and so on with what needed to be done, analyze the data, put it together, focus on the things that made a difference, and that's where our energies went, and we got that school off the negative list. Alignment with institution implies need for ownership. One of the complaints I have about what they're doing in Houston is that it's all top down, it's basically a dictatorial management program. I mean, there's some things about it that are necessary because it's law, but there's something about it that are not. And why have the people in the school business learn from people like Demings and organizations like Motorola and General Electric that use Six Sigma processes or lean management or so on, where you have teams of people that work together. You know, if I want to know what's wrong with the chemistry scores, I'm going to chemistry teachers. You know, help me figure this out. And what do we need to do to fix it? And they're not doing enough of that. Now, in reconstituting the school, the teachers have to reapply for their job. And that's probably required and necessary. Because if a school gets in that bad a shape over time, you've probably got people there that aren't effective at what they're doing, and they need to find some other job. And we did that as well. But I got the people and my staff and I to buy into what we're doing. And like I say, we made rapid progress. Employees are much more willing to implement an initiative if they help in the selection, training, and the implementation of the process. If they have ownership, you know, it helps. Okay. If the initiative is too far ahead of the employees, then and it's something that, you know, like, we don't want to do that. It's not going to. Okay, set up a pilot program, get the best people you can to help you implement that. And it's probably going to work. I mean, if it's aligned right with the program, in my case with schools and kids and so on, it'll work. And I did that with a product-oriented education program. So results of bad training. So what kind of what did I accomplish, if you will, with my team of people and the people that I pulled into, you know, this concept of management? Well, I was nominated TEA as Outstanding Social Studies Educator. I earned Alvin High School, when I was principal there, earned recognition for a Go-to-Free Schools program from TEA and from the National Department of Education. Advanced introduced AISD, Alvin School District, to the effective school research model, which is powerful. Larry Lizotte, Ron Edmonds, Wilbur Brookover, professors up in Michigan, that really set the groundwork for this program in the 1960s. It's a very powerful model, and I don't know whether or not more people using it. Significantly reduced drug and alcohol violations in high school, and every school I've been in was received the Region 4 High School Principal of the Year in 1990. In 2016, the Texas Association of School Boards Region 8 Superintendent of the Year. Implemented leadership in the STEM programs in Greenville, which resulted in a national championship solar car, 2 years. So this is not updated. The other thing is that, and the two-time world champion robotics team in FIRST Robotics. FIRST Robotics competition, the world competition, is about 300 teams from all over the world. And as a result of the performance of those guys, they also, it led 2 of the districts to TEA recognized status. Hunt County African American Leadership Superintendent of the Year in 2013, $10,000 scholarship from Moore University Academy, and like I told you, it was hard to reconstitute Greenville High School, which we did in a year and a half. So Alvin High School, which is my alma mater, and I was also principal there for 8 years, from 1985 to 1993. And during that time, we significantly reduced the drug and alcohol violations. Mr. Hassey, when he hired me, he brought me in, he said, Don, he said, let me tell you what I want you to do. Two major things. One, you've got to improve instruction on the campus. And I cut my teeth, as a teacher. 12 years, department head, as a teacher. And the other thing is that we've got to do something about the drug and alcohol violations and discipline problems. So we did. And I'll show you some charts. So we actually involved students and staff in improvement initiatives. Trained 152 teachers on my staff, 223 employees in high school. Introduced them all to and trained them all in the Johnson & Johnson Cooperative Learning Program, which is a powerful program. Charles McCauley, if you know Charles McCauley. Charles McCauley graduated in high school, he taught there for years, and they named a building after him, right? After I went through this training, and Charles was kind of like, I don't need to learn this, I already know everything. I don't need to learn this. He didn't say that, but he said, you really know, he did, went through the training, he implemented that. He came back in my office one day and he said, Don, I gotta tell you something. Okay? He said, I am a much better teacher because of that program. And I can tell you, I observed him, and some of the things he did were outstanding, which you might expect from Charles McCauley. But that program made a difference in how he taught. Implemented the first student assistance programs in the state, one of the first. That was an extremely powerful program, and unfortunately, I don't know when they cut it out, they haven't continued it. But I know that, who was the pharmacist on the board? JB Hensler. JB Hensler was really, proud of the program, and I'll spare you the data because I don't have time for all that. But it made a huge difference in the lives of a lot of kids.
I met him when the school opened.
Yeah.
And I went there.
Okay, cool. There you go. So, improved the instructional program and state assessment results. Our students improved the test scores and so on. With a group of parents, we developed and implemented the first project graduation program. One of the first. Galveston Ball High was the first in Texas that I know of, and that was a year before we did it. And then my parents were great in this program. In 1980, I think they're still doing that. We also initiated Alvin Community College dual credit program. Okay, so one of my counselors, Judy Stracer, so Judy Kendrick came in one day and she said, Don, we can cooperate with Alvin Community College, do a program where kids get high school and college credit in the same class, same course, at the same time. And I said, I kind of heard something about it. I said, yeah, let's look at that. So anyway, she told me, filled me in. So I called and talked to Mr. Meadows, who was, I don't know what his official role was at that time, but he had something to do with dual credit. So I talked to Jim Meadows. I said, hey, Mr. Meadows, da-da-da-da. He said, well, let me tell you this. He said, we would love to work with you, but make sure, and I don't know what the politics were involved in this, he said, just make sure whenever you talk about it, you say that you initiated with us, we didn't come to you. I said, okay. And you know the results. How many of you have been to a graduation of ACC? And how many students out there are getting dual credit? Probably more than half of them in some cases that graduate from high school and community college at the same time, about half of them. So it's a huge program, not just Alvin High School. 1985, I implemented a process of teachers could evaluate my assistant principal and me and give us feedback about how the job we were doing on discipline. Received a district grant, implemented a product-oriented program. I don't have time to go through that. This is a chart that shows the results of the drug and alcohol program that we did. So this section right here, that's the administration prior to mine, okay? So people I brought in, people I worked with, and people like helped in the library, she even helped. And so we implemented our program. So this is our first year. So the dark one is drugs. The dark one here is drugs. This one is actually alcohol, and the light colored bar is combined total of both drugs and alcohol. And I think it's pretty easy to see that it's going in the right direction. Okay, made huge progress. And this was a time, guys, when drugs and alcohol schools were, they still are in many ways, but it was a huge issue. And POE program, I don't have time to look at that. It made a huge difference. They discontinued at some point after I left, but I basically had 3 teachers, English, biology, and algebra teacher, teaching the same group of about 78 kids during a 3-hour block that they controlled. So I gave them control of that 3-hour block of time. They taught those 3 subjects during the time as a cooperative team. They did an amazing job. 2 of them, I also had in the English department, Judy Radigan and Suzanne Peterson came to see me and they said, we want to do a program like that, but we want to do with a class of all girls, junior level girls. And Judy, I'm going to teach them creative writing and English and so forth and so on. Suzanne's going to teach them calligraphy and illustration. And what we're going to do is we're going to get them to produce a children's literature book. And they did. And she brought something to show me, and I'm going like, blew me away. And I said, Judy, you go back and tell those girls, I will give them $50 for any one of those books that they want to sell. This is 1992. I said, I will give you $50 for any one of those books they want to sell. How many do I own? That's not rhetorical. I mean, how many do you think I own?
0.
Zero.
They're proud of it.
They would sell them. You know, it was a product. It meant a lot to them. And I'm sorry, but one of them, one of the girls, one of the books was written about a child that had been abused, and it was a bit autobiographical. We found out later. So anyway, State versus Greenville ISD. You know, we went in and reconstituted the school and so on. You look at social studies scores, for example. Just one example: African American. The state African American students from during that 10-year period increased 45%. Our kids 134%. So, and so on. You can see the difference. Made a huge impact on the kids in that school. Dual credit. We stressed dual credit program. And from the time we worked on this, total enrollment went up 163% from 2008 to 2017. African American went up 200%. Now the numbers are low, but you know it had a significant improvement, and we continue to work on that. This is from Greenville. This is the test scores, a line graph. You can see the gap between the different subpopulations: African American, Hispanic, white, economically disadvantaged. So we break down all that data by subpops and see how they're doing and work on fixing it. And you can see that we narrowed the gap and raised all subpops. That's what you want to see on a graph like that. Same thing in science. I mean, we had them all above 80%, and they were going down at this point. African American in 2003 was at 7% passing. Okay, and now by 2013 they were at 82%. So same thing with reading, same thing with social studies. Took a dip though. We had a little bit of a dip there. That just kind of sums up some of the things that we accomplished. West Orange Stark, I was the superintendent there. Same thing. Narrowed the gap and raised the test score. These are math scores. And any math people out there, you know that's a challenge, right? And but our teachers and staff, they bought into the system and did a good job. Reading, same thing. A little bit flatter, but we still made significant improvement. That's my dad's technical uniform. That's my dad's corner in the house that we have. That's the flag that was on his casket. This is a telegraph key because he did Morse code and all that kind of stuff back there. Did a lot of coded messages for headquarters and stuff. So, and his medals over here, we put little medals on a little plaque up there, and that's my dad. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Any questions? Well, I really appreciate your attention because I know that was like 43 minutes. It's a little long. So, thank you.
Thank you.